You're tuned in to 22 Crime, where the truth hides in the details. Together we dive into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the mysteries that have left investigators puzzled and families searching for justice. Because in the world of crime, the truth is never as simple as it seems. With just 22 minutes on the clock, let's dive into today's case and uncover the shocking truth. In late July 2023, a family lunch in the small Victorian town of Leongatha ended in unimaginable tragedy. 5 people gathered for what seemed like a routine meal, but within hours, 4 of them fell violently ill. By the end of the week, 3 were dead, and 1 was fighting for his life in critical condition. The dish at the center of this calamity: a homemade Beef Wellington, allegedly containing toxic death cap mushrooms. At the heart of this mystery lies Erin Patterson, the cook and host of the lunch, who claims the mushrooms used were store-bought and unassuming. Yet, questions have arisen. Was this a case of tragic ignorance, an accidental poisoning caused by a misidentified ingredient, or was it a premeditated act of murder? As investigators uncover more details, the case raises troubling possibilities, including a history of strained family dynamics, inconsistencies in Erin's account, and suspicious actions taken in the aftermath. The question remains, was this an innocent mistake or a calculated crime? The clock is ticking. Let's uncover the truth behind today's mystery. Viewer discretion is advised. 22 is a true crime podcast that delves into real-life crime stories, which often involve graphic descriptions, sensitive content, and strong language that may not be suitable for all audiences. We strive to present these cases with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Please note that the content discussed may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Additionally, all resources and information presented in this podcast are obtained from publicly available internet sources. Listener discretion is strongly advised, and we recommend that only mature audiences proceed with caution. If you are sensitive to such content, please consider watching another video. Stay safe and take care of your mental health. On July 29, 2023, the quiet Victorian town of Leongatha became the backdrop for an unfolding tragedy that would grip the nation. That Saturday, Erin Patterson hosted a lunch at her home, inviting her former in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, Heather and Ian Wilkinson, for what seemed to be a conciliatory gathering amidst family tensions. Erin and her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, had separated, and some believed this lunch was an attempt to mend bridges, or at least maintain civility within the family. The meal served was a classic dish, Beef Wellington, prepared with a mushroom filling encased in puff pastry. According to Erin, she had used fresh button mushrooms from a local supermarket and dried mushrooms purchased months earlier from an Asian grocery store in Melbourne. She later claimed to have eaten the same dish as her guests, but her version of events would come under intense scrutiny. Hours after the lunch, the 4 guests began experiencing symptoms consistent with severe food poisoning, including nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Initially, these symptoms were thought to be caused by gastroenteritis. However, as their conditions rapidly deteriorated, doctors suspected something far more sinister. Within 24 hours, all 4 were admitted to the hospital, where medical teams quickly identified the signs of mushroom poisoning. By August 4, 6 days after the lunch, Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson had tragically passed away. The following day, Don Patterson also succumbed to his condition. Ian Wilkinson, a local Baptist pastor, remained hospitalized in critical condition, clinging to life. His eventual survival made him the sole guest to survive the ill-fated meal. As the deaths mounted, suspicions turned to the mushrooms in the dish. Investigators identified death cap mushrooms as the likely culprit. This lethal species, responsible for the majority of fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide, contains toxins so potent that even small amounts can cause liver and kidney failure. Its presence in a homemade meal raised immediate questions. How did such a deadly ingredient end up in Erin Patterson's Beef Wellington? Erin claimed that she too had consumed the meal and experienced mild symptoms, including stomach discomfort and diarrhea. However, she recovered quickly, leading many to question how she had escaped the catastrophic outcomes suffered by her guests. Adding to the intrigue, Erin revealed that her 2 children, who were not at the lunch but reportedly ate leftovers of the same meal later, did not become ill. She explained this by stating that she had scraped the mushrooms off the servings given to her children because they disliked mushrooms. Described by acquaintances as someone who had experience foraging mushrooms, Erin publicly denied any wrongdoing, maintaining that the deaths were a tragic accident. She claimed that she had no reason to harm her guests and reiterated her love for those who had died, repeatedly referring to them as her loved ones in public statements. Despite these assertions, her role in preparing the meal, and the devastating consequences, kept her at the center of a growing storm of suspicion. Erin also stated that she had purchased the dried mushrooms used in the meal from an Asian grocery store in Melbourne, months before the lunch. However, she could not recall the name or location of the store, providing only vague details, such as the packaging being handwritten. Investigators struggled to verify this claim, and no reports surfaced of other consumers becoming ill from mushrooms purchased at similar outlets, adding to the suspicions surrounding Erin's account. Erin's public appearances and statements became a focal point for both investigators and the media. Her language and demeanor during interviews were closely analyzed, with many observers noting inconsistencies and perceived evasiveness in her responses. When asked about the meal and the events leading to the tragedy, Erin often diverted attention to her own emotional state, repeatedly emphasizing her devastation and love for the victims. Phrases like, "I can't believe this has happened," and "I loved them," were seen by some as attempts to deflect blame and elicit sympathy. In one interview, Erin described the deceased as some of the best people I've ever met, a statement that struck some as oddly qualified and lacking authenticity. Critics argued that her repeated use of past tense language, even when discussing Ian Wilkinson, who was still alive at the time, suggested a subconscious distancing from the victims. Additionally, her consistent failure to directly answer questions about the meal or the mushrooms further fueled speculation about her possible culpability. While Erin maintained that the tragedy was a horrific accident, her behavior, including the contradictions in her story and her defensive tone, cast a shadow over her claims. Public opinion was sharply divided, with some seeing her as a grieving host caught in an unimaginable nightmare, while others viewed her as a key suspect trying to conceal her role in a calculated act of harm. These questions and Erin's central role in the case would remain at the heart of the investigation, as authorities worked to untangle the complex web of facts surrounding the tragedy. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence in this case is a food dehydrator that Erin Patterson admitted to disposing of shortly after the lunch. Initially, Erin told investigators she had discarded the dehydrator long before the tragic meal. However, under mounting scrutiny, she confessed to throwing it away the day after the lunch, citing panic after her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, accused her of using it to poison the guests. The timing of this action raised significant red flags, leading police to recover the dehydrator for forensic analysis. Forensic experts believe the dehydrator could hold critical evidence, such as spores or remnants of toxic mushrooms, which would indicate whether it was used in the preparation of the meal. The dehydrator's disposal, coupled with Erin's contradictory statements about its use, has become a cornerstone of the investigation. Investigators have also questioned why Erin chose to dispose of it at a local tip, potentially traceable, rather than destroying it or discarding it in a more inconspicuous manner. Adding to the mystery is the absence of similar poisoning cases linked to dried mushrooms from the alleged store. Experts have noted that dried mushrooms imported into Australia undergo strict regulatory checks, making it highly unlikely for death caps to appear in commercial packaging. If Erin's claim is accurate, it suggests either a failure in food safety regulations or a highly unusual contamination event. Moreover, investigators have pointed out that death cap mushrooms grow naturally in the Leongatha area, especially around oak trees. This raises the question of whether the mushrooms used in the Beef Wellington could have been foraged locally. Erin's supposed experience with mushroom foraging, as mentioned by acquaintances, further complicates the narrative. Forensic toxicologists have described the effects of the toxin as devastating. It begins by attacking the gastrointestinal system, causing severe vomiting and diarrhea. The toxin then progresses to damage the liver and kidneys, eventually leading to organ failure and death if untreated. Ian Wilkinson, the sole surviving guest from the lunch, continues to recover but reportedly required a liver transplant. His survival and subsequent testimony could provide crucial insights into the events surrounding the meal. Adding another layer to the mystery is the near-fatal illness experienced by Erin's estranged husband, Simon Patterson, in 2022. Simon reportedly suffered a serious gastrointestinal ailment that left him in a coma for 16 days. While the cause of his illness was never conclusively determined, its symptoms, including severe vomiting and abdominal pain, were strikingly similar to those associated with death cap mushroom poisoning. The timing and nature of Simon's illness have led some to question whether there could be a connection to the current case. Was his illness purely coincidental, or does it suggest a troubling pattern? Simon's documented recovery and detailed recollection of the events leading to his hospitalization may prove to be critical if parallels are drawn between the two incidents. One of the primary pieces of evidence is the leftover Beef Wellington, which Erin Patterson reportedly handed over to authorities. Forensic toxicologists have analyzed these leftovers for traces of death cap mushrooms or other toxins. This sample is crucial because it represents a direct link to the meal consumed by the victims. The results of this analysis could confirm whether the toxic mushrooms were present and, if so, the concentration of the toxins. Such evidence would not only establish the source of the poisoning, but also provide insights into the preparation process. In addition to forensic evidence, police have conducted extensive community interviews to piece together Erin Patterson's behavior and the context surrounding the meal. Friends, family, and acquaintances have been questioned about Erin's experience with cooking, mushroom foraging, and her relationships with the victims. Surveillance footage from local businesses and roads has also been reviewed to trace Erin's movements in the days leading up to and following the lunch. One of the significant challenges in this case is proving intent. Poisoning cases often rely heavily on circumstantial evidence, as direct evidence, such as a confession or eyewitness testimony, is rare. Investigators must establish not only that toxic mushrooms were present, but also that Erin knowingly included them in the meal with the intent to harm her guests. This requires demonstrating a plausible motive and consistent behavior aligning with malicious intent. Ian Wilkinson's potential testimony is another critical component. As the sole survivor of the meal, his recollections of the lunch, including how the food was served and Erin's behavior, could shed light on key details. However, his memory may be limited due to the delayed onset of symptoms and his subsequent medical treatment. Despite this, any testimony he provides could prove pivotal in filling gaps in the investigation. Erin Patterson's status as a person of interest, rather than a charged suspect, reflects the cautious approach investigators are taking. This designation allows law enforcement to continue gathering evidence without prematurely accusing Erin of a crime. It also highlights the complexities of the case, where intent and culpability remain uncertain. The investigative process is not only about determining whether Erin Patterson committed a crime, but also about ruling out other possibilities. The thoroughness of police efforts, ranging from forensic analysis to interviews and legal procedures, underscores the gravity of the case. If foul play is ultimately ruled out, investigators must still explain how one of the deadliest mushrooms ended up in the meal, ensuring justice and safety for the community. The trial of Erin Patterson became one of the most closely followed cases in Australian legal history, drawing intense scrutiny both domestically and internationally. With its unique mix of personal tragedy, forensic intrigue, and public fascination, the proceedings offered a detailed examination of the evidence, motives, and actions surrounding the fatal mushroom lunch. The trial began in April 2024, with Erin Patterson charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Prosecutors presented a compelling narrative, suggesting that the lunch was a premeditated act motivated by personal grievances and family discord. Erin's evolving explanations regarding the origin of the mushrooms were a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Her inability to recall where the dried mushrooms were purchased, juxtaposed with her specific recollection of the handwritten label, raised doubts about her credibility. The defense argued that Erin unknowingly purchased contaminated mushrooms from an Asian grocery store. Experts testified about the possibility of accidental contamination during the drying process or supply chain, though no other illnesses were reported from similar products. Erin Patterson is scheduled to stand trial in the Latrobe Valley Supreme Court on April 28, 2025, facing charges of 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. The charges stem from a lunch held on July 29, 2023, at her Leongatha residence, where she allegedly served a Beef Wellington containing death cap mushrooms to her former in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson. All 3 succumbed to the poisoning, while Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, survived after a prolonged hospitalization. In addition to these charges, Patterson is accused of attempting to murder her ex-husband, Simon Patterson, on 4 separate occasions between 2021 and 2023. Patterson has entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. Her trial is anticipated to attract significant media attention, both nationally and internationally. In the interim, Patterson has been transferred to a protected unit within the prison system for her safety. The question of motive lies at the heart of this case, fueling public and media speculation. Theories range from sinister intent to tragic accident, leaving room for numerous interpretations of Erin Patterson's actions. Reconciliation gone wrong? A prominent theory suggests the lunch was a deliberate effort by Erin to reconcile with her estranged husband, Simon Patterson, using his parents as mediators. The meal's apparent intention, to mend familial bonds, has sparked speculation about whether tensions or underlying disputes could have escalated into something darker. Acquaintances of Erin have implied that Simon's parents, Don and Gail Patterson, may not have been supportive of the reconciliation. This context has led some to question whether the strained dynamics could have influenced Erin's state of mind or actions. A deliberate act of malice? Investigators and the public alike have examined whether the poisoning could have been a premeditated act of revenge or malice. Erin's estranged relationship with her in-laws, and the coincidental survival of her children, reportedly served the same meal but without the mushrooms, have fueled doubts about her innocence. Skeptics point to her contradictory statements and the disposal of the food dehydrator as potential signs of concealment. Could this have been an attempt to eliminate individuals perceived as obstacles, or was there another motive entirely? An innocent but tragic accident. On the other side of the spectrum, some argue that this was a case of grossly unfortunate circumstances. Erin claimed she purchased the mushrooms months before from an Asian grocery store, unaware of their toxicity. Advocates for her innocence highlight that mushroom poisoning incidents, though rare, have occurred accidentally in Australia. Erin's own reported illness after the meal, and her cooperation in providing leftovers to authorities, are seen by some as indications of her being another victim rather than a perpetrator. The case has sharply divided the local community and sparked debates across Australia. In Leongatha, a town known for its close-knit nature, opinions about Erin Patterson's innocence or guilt have caused significant tension. Supporters versus skeptics. Many locals have rallied behind Erin, citing her grief-stricken interviews and consistent denials as evidence of her innocence. Others remain deeply suspicious, emphasizing inconsistencies in her accounts and her perceived focus on clearing her name rather than mourning the victims. This rift has led to heated debates within the town, with residents weighing in on every detail released by authorities and the media. Parallels to Lindy Chamberlain. Comparisons to the infamous Lindy Chamberlain case, in which Lindy was falsely accused of killing her baby before being exonerated, have become a common point of reference. Like Chamberlain, Erin faces public scrutiny for her demeanor and statements, which some view as atypical of a grieving person. This parallel raises questions about how societal expectations of grief and behavior can influence perceptions of guilt or innocence. The mushroom poisoning case has highlighted the fragility of trust in small communities and the power of media in shaping public opinion. As the investigation continues, the divide between those who view Erin as a tragic figure and those who see her as a possible murderer underscores the complexity of determining truth in high-profile cases. Whether this turns out to be a horrifying accident or an act of calculated malice, the theories and speculations surrounding this tragedy will likely resonate long after the case is resolved. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If you've made it to this point, drop a comment with the word "done," and we'll give you a personal shout-out to show our appreciation. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive in this murder and media frenzy. It was as fascinating for us to create as we hope it was for you to hear. If you found this episode thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We also invite you to join our YouTube channel, where you can get early access to our content, have your questions answered directly, and enjoy exclusive members-only content. We'd love to know what you think about this case. Share your opinions in the comments below. We're always eager to hear your thoughts. For those wanting to explore more on true crime, we've included Amazon affiliate links to some of the books we referenced in our researches. Purchasing through the link won't cost you anything extra, but it will support the channel and help us continue bringing you more content. If you're craving even more, consider joining our Patreon community. As a member, you'll get access to the full script of this episode, exclusive book summaries, and even the complete set of images featured in this case, available for purchase in our Patreon store. This has been 22 Crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.